One of the questions we get asked the very most is, do you have a therapist you can recommend for me? And while we wish that we knew of therapists in every single place, in every single part of the country, we don't. So what do we tell them instead, Mel?
We say check out BetterHelp because it's online, it's at a reasonable price, and you can be matched with a therapist within 24 hours. I've also used them and they have been great. And if you don't like your therapist, guess what? Click, and get a new one.
Absolutely. It's so hard when you have an in-person therapist, if you're not clicking with them, to cut them off and get a new one. So that's not an issue with BetterHelp. So we always tell people to try BetterHelp. And if you use our promo code, which is
trybetterhelp.com/WWDN,
you get 10% off your first month.
Go ahead and try it out. That's trybetterhelp.com/WWDN. And you know what? I'm a big fan of doing therapy where you don't have to wear pants, but nobody knows about it.
Are you wearing pants right now, Mel?
I'll see you later. Bye. That's trybetterhelp.com/WWDN.
It is time, Mel, that we have a nice discussion. Oh, my hair's looking weird.
I agree.
How do we even begin, though?
I say let's just talk about what's happening right now, like a light blah blah, and then we can get into
The deep,
where
dark, scary.
in the world have I been for the last 23 months. How about that?
I cleaned my garage today. That's what I did today. That's a light blah, isn't it? That's
pretty
topic.
good. Yeah. Right now it's starting to be less wintry and spring. So are the trails still muddy?
Some of them are. A lot of them are, but some of them are not. So I can't wait till there are more that I can ride, because I've been riding the same place all winter long and it gets kind of boring. And also it's freezing cold. And there are buffalo that try to kill you, but
Yeah.
none have yet. But I heard a crazy story, Mel, that I need to tell you, probably a different time, about a buffalo that like went after somebody.
I have a story like that. One of my musician friends said that his friend in Jackson got bucked up by a buffalo into a tree and then got stuck in the tree and had a broken tailbone.
Why was he that close to the bison?
Obviously because he's an idiot.
Okay.
And knowing the friend that told me the story, I'm not surprised.
The place where I go ride my bike a lot is an island by my house, and they have a buffalo population there, and they just are on the island. And like I see them every time I'm out there, and it's just like I just look at them and I say, I mean you no harm, and try and give them a wide berth, but they're still terrifying.
Yeah. They're very large.
They're huge.
They will kill you. Let's do a grief check-in.
Okay.
Which is hilariously part of the light blah blah.
I don't know though, because I just feel like life is just like normal. I don't know. It doesn't feel like different or weird or griefy to me. It's just like nowadays I'm more directing my emotional bandwidth towards helping other people who are in acute grief. So yeah, my life I just feel like this is how it is.
Yeah. You're used to it.
Yeah, although I do have one child who's having a lot of problems with anxiety and just fears, and took him back to therapy, and he like drew the things he was anxious about. And like the biggest one was like mom dying, which is just like, oh, it's so hard. But yeah, he's like, I can't, if mom dies, then I'll be all alone. And so I just need her not to die. And I'm like, I know, especially by a buffalo.
Yeah. Well, I have no children, but funnily enough, I had a grief dream. I don't even know what it was. It was a dream and Scott was in it last night. It's been years since I've had one. So I was really surprised that this came up. In the past, I had had dreams where he went on a trip to Mexico.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
And he was supposed to tell me when he got there, and I would know if he read my messages by checking Facebook Messenger, because it would have said read. In the previous dreams, it said that he read them all, but then he went missing. So then I was like, well, you're still alive. You just were running from me. But then his family didn't know where he was, right? So that dream probably happened year 1. I'm in
Yeah.
year 7 right now. So last night the dream was I caught him and I was right. He totally ran away.
With a salsa dancer.
No, at first to Mexico and then made his way back to the States somehow and was living as a college student
Of course.
somewhere. I think it was Utah State. I don't know. And I I caught him and I was like, "Scott, do you understand what you put me through? You could have just said, I want to just go away. And then I would have known. And you could have saved your family some stress and not become a missing person in previous dream." And he was like, he'd never really answered to it. But then I ended up calling one of his best friends, and she's awesome. She's Ukrainian. And so on the phone, I called her and I was like, you're not going to believe this. And I'm so sorry to tell you this, but Scott has pulled over a scam on all of us. He is not dead. And she was like, I'm going to kill him. So she flies out from Pennsylvania, wherever she is. And so then we're on this hunt to find Scott. And we find him living with this college student who's super adorable and nice. And we're like, we have to save her because now Scott's turned into this scam guy. And he just left his whole family and was fine knowing that thought he was dead and we've been grieving and everybody's unwell from this. And he's just here like living the life. And so then our goal became, we have to talk to the girl and say, hey, we know that you didn't know about this, but also you need to look at these red flags and you should probably run away. But we also understand it will take you 7 times to hear this information to then leave. Anyway, then I woke up. But I thought it was interesting that Scott made an appearance in my dream, and it was like a sequel to a previous dream.
Jason's in my dreams, not all the time, but it's not uncommon. And it's always just like, oh yeah, Jason's there, like I know he's actually dead sometimes. I don't know. It's just always weird. How old would Scott be for reals now?
Okay, right now, this day,
You can be within 2 years because birthdays make it weird.
he was born in 78. How old is he?
42.
I'm
Oh,
42.
46. 46.
He would be 46, going to turn 47.
Okay. So he can't live in college.
No, and he
Too old.
looked so different. He looked like he was in college. He looked like his actual college photos, and his
Oh.
hair was long and curly, and he had a 20-year-old body, not a 46-year-old body. So I guess that should have been the tip off, but I don't know. People are taking
Dreams are weird.
semaglutide shots and they're like really skinny now. So maybe he did that. I don't know.
Scott, you scam artist, you.
Yep.
I mean, you saw his body though.
I did, but did I?
Was it a Madame Tussauds wax figure?
It could have been.
I mean, they kind of like dead bodies don't look that good. So
I know my dad died because I watched him being breathing on a machine and then not. I know
Mhm.
he died. And then I saw him at the mortuary. I never saw Scott go from
alive to
warm
dead.
warm to not warm.
Ugh.
From warm to wax figure.
It's crazy. This is our life where we just talk about this like it's normal. I don't know.
But you know it's gonna get even better and more crazy is the next part.
Yep. So you may or may not have noticed, but the kind of how the podcast has been coming out has been a little bit different. We haven't checked in with each other as often. We've been a little bit more maybe, what's the right word?
Professional.
No, that's not the word. Never. Inconsistent, at times in when the episodes come out. And
Although I'd like to say they've been doing great since January.
yeah. I'm saying this is like for a little while.
Mhm.
And there's a reason for most of that. I mean, some of it's just that we're the worst, but there's also been happenings that we're going to talk about now. And we've had to wait a very specific amount of time before we could just explain everything. So, Mel, you have alluded to the event, but and I don't know how much you want to like go into the details of that event, but when and what and why?
Okay. Well, everybody, I might share a fair amount of details about this because it is public record and anybody can access it
Now,
now
for a $225 fee. I'm
per
just joking.
page,
I don't know what it is, but it's a lot.
which maybe for some of you, it gives you the sign that this had to do with a court case. Well, Anita, I did allude to this previously 2 years ago. The length of the entire event and then subsequent unfolding of judicial events was 20 months long. It was right before we went to Sweden to our friend Constance's wedding.
Gosh.
Like literally 2 days before.
Mm-hmm.
So that was in the year, not 2025, which is where we are now. It was in 2023. I said this on the podcast earlier. Back then, I don't remember. And Anita's laughing, and there's a reason why. And I'll let her tell why.
Explain it later, yeah.
But I was assaulted by a family member. I guess before I say this, I should say, if any of you have triggers about domestic violence, hearing about domestic violence, things like that, I'm giving you the warning right now. Please take care. This happened to me. I'm alive and here and have survived, and I'm also going to talk about it. So, I was assaulted by a family member, and the nature of that assault was strangulation. I was also saved by a different family member who pulled said arm off of me, and now I'm here. But there was a lot that has happened since then, and that's a very, very serious situation. For those who are not aware, aggravated assault is different than regular assault in the legal world in the way that if there's a weapon used in the assault, it's considered aggravated. Because strangulation can take you out so quickly, it's considered as dangerous as somebody holding a gun to your head. So that's the initial thing that happened. So back in when I said I was assaulted by a family member, that's what happened. And a whole slew of things has unraveled since then. And Anita, I'm going to let you tell the next part because this might just take me a minute to get my bearings.
After this assault happened, then it's interesting. This has been my Anita's real life primer course on the judicial system because I have never experienced it firsthand, even though this wasn't firsthand. But and it's probably like slightly different state to state. But anyway, the state of Utah got the information about what had happened, and then their prosecutors decide whether or not they have enough evidence to go forward in a trial or a case. Yeah, I guess. But in this case, they decided yes, they would like to proceed, and that is super that's already so full of ugh.
It's so emotionally charged. And
Yeah.
before it even gets to a trial, it's attorneys on either the side of the state and the defense, they have all these pre-trial hearings. And so what that is, it's like I'm all as a victim. So now I'm labeled a victim, right, in the system. You're assigned a victim's advocate, and that person tells you kind of what's going on, which I'll say isn't much information. There's not a lot, a lot of the times I was in the dark, which added to a lot of stress. But on the prosecution and the defense, they tried to negotiate a plea.
Like 3 times, didn't they? Or at least 2 times.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's like, it depends on kind of what the situation is. So say there's mental health involved, there can oftentimes be mental health court extended. The prosecutor will say, hey, well, we're willing to do this. And then the defense will be like, let me talk to my client. And then they're like, yeah, yay or nay. And if they say no, then it's like, okay, you're back to the drawing board. Okay, well, then they offer something else. And then if they, ultimately, if you run out of things to offer, if the prosecution runs out of things to offer the person who's accused of the crime, then it goes to trial.
Hmm.
So that's what happened in this case.
Right.
And that took, I don't know, I'm kind of guessing because I don't really want to actually look back and check dates because it was really traumatizing. A year, 14 months or so for that back and forth uh, to know what was going to happen. And then, yes, it would be going to trial.
Yeah.
And sometimes the pretrial hearings might not happen because maybe one of the parties isn't able to come or is, who knows, this or that. So it's very, very slow. I've never been a victim in a judicial case before.
Like a lot of our listeners probably have,
Yeah.
which is sorry for you guys.
Yeah, so those of you who
Awful.
have been through some things like this, and it's considered domestic violence, even though in the state of Utah, if you're related to the person, like sibling or other, and they don't live with you, it's still considered a cohabitant, even though you don't live in the same house. That was the case for me. I don't know. It's super hard, and when it comes to things like domestic violence, it's really messy. It's almost easier, I think, in air quotes. The same thing happened to me, but by a stranger. Of course, they're going to be like,
There's a good guy and there's a bad guy, and not here.
in this case, it's in the family.
Hmm.
People choose sides.
Yeah.
Nobody asked me anything. In this case, in my family, I was told that I was wrong and kind of that I brought it on. That's not true. And it was really difficult because I had no family support. And fast forward, still don't have family support. Who wants to go deal with like domestic violence within families? You know, if you don't have, nobody does. So
No, it's super messy.
what ended up happening, and where I'm kind of jumping around, people in the family picked a side, and they picked a side without ever talking to me. And so the only people who were on my side were the state of Utah. And then my friends, and even my friends, you know, they're all great people. You were part of that, Anita, and it's not super emotionally cut and dried because you know these people too. You know all of us involved. And
Hmm.
it's just like hard for everybody. I'm really grateful for my friends because my friends have showed me what family is. And it's unfortunate because there's been a severe breakage in my family. Now, we are talking about how this has affected the podcast. This did go to trial. What's weird, it's like, I was like, okay, this has happened. This was terrifying. I'm not going to explain here what it was like to get strangled because it was really scary and I don't want to put additional harm on people listening. But man, that was a new level of stress that I never, ever have gone through in my life. And then, you know, in grief with deaths, we talk about secondary losses. Oh, same, same with this. And this was a little different though, because then I was worried for my safety. I was dealing with, do I need to look over my shoulder? People in the neighborhood were choosing sides that others were telling me about. Still, nobody even in the neighborhood was really talking to me. And so I just felt like I was just like trapped person,
Except for one person.
except one person, my best friend who loves me, builds skate ramps with me.
It's my dad.
Yeah, Randy Randall. Yeah, and so it's like, okay, so I could have died in where I live. Am I safe in the house? Didn't feel like it. Am I safe in the neighborhood? I don't know. I'm not safe anywhere. So then I'm like, oh, we have a podcast. I feel a responsibility to continue the podcast because we're all here because we have dead people and we're just trying to make it through this life. Well, my anxiety and everything and my health got so bad, and also just logistics for, you know, there were times where I'm like, I can't even be around what I knew to be safe. Sometimes that affected if I had access to recording equipment. Sometimes, you know, and then, you know, your brain just is all over the place when you have high anxiety too. So that's why Anita and I didn't do our little blah blahs.
And for another reason, the defense attorney for this person wanted to use the podcast as evidence. This is the best thing that's ever happened to the podcast because what in the world? Okay. So we had to start being more careful. I mean, just in general, when there's like a trial going on, you have to be more careful about what you talk about because you don't want to endanger the proceedings, right? Like you don't want to talk about things because then it gets sticky. So it was like we couldn't talk about it at all because Mel was not okay. And also like we can't talk about it because then it might cause problems as Mel being a witness or we heard you guys said this, whatever. So,
Yeah. And also, since this is, again, messy and in the family, I would get under fire if I said anything that somebody thought wasn't appropriate,
mhm.
which I find ironic because something was done to me that was not okay and endangered my life. But people didn't seem to have a problem with that part. Hey guys, just checking in and want to say if you are enjoying this podcast
And you want to see it keep going, maybe it's helped you through your widowhood journey and you think that it might help others on their widowhood journey, you can support that cause by joining our Patreon.
some of the things that you get as a Patreon beneficiary are ad-free episodes, so you don't have to hear ads like this.
You also get exclusive content, and at a certain level, you might also get an exclusive t-shirt you can only get that place.
That is true. It's pretty cool. There are 4 different tiers available, so check it out. It's patreon.com/WWDN.
And as an extra bonus, very often you get your names read by one of my kids, and they will do a terrible job with the pronunciation. And that's like a bonus, I think.
I think it's kind of the best. I would much rather hear somebody butcher my name than say it correctly.
A child butcher it than an adult do it correctly. Yep. So go to patreon.com/WWDN to keep our podcast going and support the widowed cause.
Yes! Thanks, guys! Back to our regularly scheduled program.
The thing that Mel, everybody wanted you to do was just to deal with it on your own and to not involve anybody else, right? It was just like, Mel, you're making a big deal of this. You shouldn't have called 911. We just need to deal with it internally. We don't want to air our dirty laundry. And what that's code for is suck it up, shut up. It's not that big of a deal, right? Which is like, it is a big deal. And also, like, consequences are sometimes important for people. So, yeah.
I mean, and if it's as serious as the state of Utah deeming it aggravated assault, it's not just nothing.
Which also turned into a big sticking point for people in your family is there was this feeling that Mel shouldn't be doing this to the other family member instead of like, well, Mel's not prosecuting anybody. Like Mel agreed to be a witness in this proceeding.
Mm-hmm.
And which is like sometimes people say like pressing charges. I don't know that you're really pressing charges. You're just saying I will cooperate if you choose to press charges, which is what you did. So it became this big like Mel shouldn't be doing this. It's like, well, Mel's not doing it. The state is doing it because there's evidence that this person did something incredibly dangerous and harmful to another human, and we have laws about that. So, yeah, that was an interesting like position for people. And I can understand that confusion because again, like most of us have not spent a great deal of time dealing with, arrests and trials and prosecutions. We only have watched it on Law and Order. And now we know that that's not even accurate.
I know, because you sat through a lot of it and it was super different. What I found fascinating is how quick people are to pick a side and make a judgment without, first of all, getting any basic information, maybe going to the source or multiple sources, and learning that civil court is not the same thing as criminal court. I am not capable, like Anita said, as a person to be like, I
prosecute thee.
It's like, nope, it's the government versus the person that did the thing. Now, when you hear people say, oh, they took them to civil court and that makes it easier for because of like there's not you don't have to do what is it
Yeah,
called?
it's
Prove
not.
beyond a reasonable
Yeah, it's just
doubt.
the preponderance
Usually
of.
with that, people are like, well, the ultimate penalty is money. Pay me money. But it's like I couldn't go through civil court and say, give this person criminal charges.
You should go through civil court though and get some money.
I don't want any
Just
money.
kidding, don't. Like that's
No.
this was horrible. You don't need to do it. This actually went to trial, which we found out that trials of this nature are incredibly rare because usually people take plea deals because the plea deal is like, hey, you need to do anger management classes and you need to do therapy and you're going to be on probation and you need to stay off of drugs and alcohol and you will not have a felony on your record. So most people are like, that sounds good to me, but that did not happen in this case. So it went to trial. And there's this like element of uncertainty, I would say, Mel. Tell me if this is true. Like we think it's going to be this date. Oh, it's not going to be this date. We think it's going to be this date. Oh, no, we got to do this one other thing. It's going to be this date. And so every time you get yourself like prepared to go into battle almost, and then they just pull the rug out from under you and they're like, oh no, it's going to be in 8 more months or whatever. No, it wasn't that long, but like 6 weeks later or 2 months later or whatever. And so you're like always girding your loins just to be disappointed or to not have it happen over and over.
Yeah. When I talked about the victim's advocate and having one, everybody who has been the victim of a crime is assigned one of those
In Utah.
in Utah, and they're juggling a bunch of cases. I think I had three different people. And so, in that amount of time, even just before the trial, which was like about 18, no, 16 to 18 months, I was trying to get information on do you have any resources, not resources, money, resources that you can give me?
Like a brochure.
How can I mentally prepare for this? Because this is so re traumatizing daily as a victim because I'm already dealing with the harm that's been done, which is pretty intense psychologically. And then to watch the fallout within the family, that was really
Mhm.
hard. And so I'm just like, can somebody give me like a printout and say, here's
Can somebody
generally,
hit me over the head with a frying
yeah,
pan?
I mean, even things like, can you tell me how trials work? Can you tell me what type of role the witness plays? Can you tell me the order of things? You know, and you can, I found out for myself because I didn't have any help or get responses ever. I just learned whatever I could off of the court, like whatever it is in Utah, utah.courts.gov. But
Hmm.
it's like there's not somebody there that can answer all your questions. They're like, well, if you need help with therapy, like we can like refer you to somebody and whatever. I'm like, I don't need that. I need information because I don't understand what's going on.
Did I wish that the utahcourts.gov was like had a link to Netflix and like LA Law or something from
Night
from the
court would be
80s
great.
night court. Yep. But the trial, it did eventually come. And the reason that we had to wait until now is because there was like a 45-day or 60-day, I don't remember the exact date, like window after the ending of it that it could be appealed. And so we had to wait for that to be so that everything's settled and done and there's not going to be any additional like, oh, now we're going to reopen it or whatever. So that's
Yeah.
why we have waited this long. And
Yes.
the trial took place in January. Is that right?
No.
February?
October.
No, it was not.
Yeah. And the sentencing was in January.
Oh, that's right. We had to wait 45 or 60 days after the sentencing to be able to talk about that because then everything's finalized and done, and there's not going to be an appeal or like a surprise, we're reopening the case. So the trial happened in October. Can't believe it's been that long.
I know it's
It seems like it was not that long
the
ago.
whole speedy trial thing, like that's I
That's
don't it's relative.
So the trial was like really close to my house. So it was very convenient for me for the most part. I attended the whole trial. And what I've told people is it was the most fascinatingly boring thing I've ever experienced in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Because they, with each witness, for instance, we watched the body camera footage from every single police officer that responded to the scene. And we'd already seen that exact same thing played over and over and over. And then they would ask questions to each police officer. And so it was really like, oh, we already know. But that's like how it works. So that's why it was fascinating, is to just see how like the actual process works. And like jury selection was really interesting. We had some fun characters in the jury that I'm really sad didn't get on the jury. They asked, one of the questions they asked is like, do any of you have a criminal record, basically? And this one lady was like, I do. And they asked what the story was, and she was like, well, my son didn't go to school, and so I had to bring him to court, and we were late, and I was trying to get through security, and my belt was going off, and I was trying to hurry, and so I started yelling at the guy. And they're just like, take off your belt, and I yelled at him, and so they arrested me. I'm like, okay. Anyway, she didn't get on the jury.
Nah, bummer. But there were also a couple of people that, because they asked and they say, on, I guess on their sheet, it says, do you not want to do this? And some people said, I don't want to do this. So then they say, hey, you answer this. Why? And both of those people, I think, said, well, I've not done this before, so I don't know what I'm doing. That's why I don't want to do it.
I felt bad for, there was one guy who was like, I do want to do this. And they were like, why do you want to do this? He's like, I just want to like participate in my civic duty. And they were like, you may not. And he didn't get to do
Oh,
it.
I forgot. I forgot a lot of this. Man.
They had to fill out their marital status. And there were a couple who were widows. And they asked them, will your feelings be different if you are hearing a story that involves a widowed person? And both of them were like, like, I think I can be impartial, but
Yeah,
I don't think either. I think they dismissed both of those people too.
really. Yeah,
Hmm.
and so they go through a lot of different criteria or just questions, which was really interesting. And I was allowed to be in the courtroom for that part. And other than that,
You missed all of it.
I missed all of it because I'm not, as a witness, they don't want you to be in there so that your testimony is swayed. But then I did testify,
Right.
and it was a long time. It felt like a long time. And that's so stressful. It's because it's like, you don't know what anybody's going to ask you. I didn't know. The thing about if you're in a criminal case, and so if it's like a state prosecutor, they cannot coach you. They can't say, well, here's what you say if somebody says this. They like can't. So even if I were to ask, well, what do I say if they say that, there it goes, tell the truth. That's it. Tell the truth.
Hmm.
And I'm like, I know that part, but like, is there a better? Because I was trying to be like, what's the best way to form a sentence?
Yeah.
Like to that kind of stuff. They no help. And then with the defense, you just have to be like, their job is to tear me down and say I'm the worst person and that I'm a liar. And so,
They did both of those things. I thought it was I mean, when I think about testifying, I would have a really hard time just shutting up. Like like they say to answer the question and don't give additional information, just like simply, and then don't keep talking, Anita. But
some of the stuff's hard though because there's context. And so you
mhm,
can't answer yes or no, or it's like, yes, in this case, blah, blah, blah. However,
yeah.
here's what, blah, blah, blah. So it was really an interesting experience. I don't recommend it for anybody. I've been through some hell in my life, and I did not expect this to be one of the hells. I was just like, okay, I've had some dead husband stuff, and then after the dead husband, a lot of, non-stability. This was like next level.
I was really impressed with the judge who oversaw your trial. He was very good. I thought he was very thoughtful. He was very measured. I thought he was very fair. I was really like, I was a little bit nervous about that. I thought, oh, like, ugh, what if they're terrible? I was actually also really impressed with the police officers in the situation. So that was like really interesting. But Mel, can I tell some of the details that were the best and so funny for me because, I was just watching. Although I will tell you that when we went into the courtroom, when it was actually time to start doing testimony, there was a real weird feeling. Like I was like sweaty and like amped up because it feels like you're going into battle. And I wanted there to be sides of the room like in a wedding, like you got the groom side and the bride side, so that it was very clear who was on whose side. But nope, there were just big long benches. And so you were sitting by people who you didn't really know. Well, I mean, I kind of knew because I knew who all the people were, but you're kind of intermixed.
Anita, I hear we have a store.
Oh, we sure do. We've actually had it for quite a while. It's called the Snarky Grief Shop, and it's where you will find all of our best grief merch. That is, yes, a little snarky. For instance, it's where you will find the official widow card that you can pull and use at your convenience.
You can put it in your wallet, and anytime you need to use it, pull it out, play the widow card.
Yeah, we have glow-in-the-dark stickers. We have shirts that say, "Be nice, my husband is dead." We also have the ones that are not quite as jarring, so that you can wear them out in public and not feel weird. But sometimes you need that shirt.
I wear my "Be nice, my husband is dead" to bed because I'm a little scared to go in public with it. But you've worn it on airplanes before with your kids.
Yeah, every time we go to the airport, I wear that shirt because I'm just like, listen, I got to get all these kids through security. Just be nice to me. Thank you so much. And it's worked for the most part.
Some of the less snarky grief shirts are podcast shirts or Widow Wives Club. We also have Resilient AF, right? Anita, what else we got in there?
Yeah, which we're telling everybody who cares, like Mel's mom, that means American fork, because she can't know what it really means, guys.
Yeah.
Stickers and mugs and notebooks and just cool stuff that you can use to express your snarky grief. You'll find it by going to our website, shop.widowwedonow.com. There's a lot of W's in there, so just make sure that you've counted them and there's the right number.
We will link to that in the show notes, and it's also in our app, which you can get from the App Store. Can people get it from our regular website too?
Yes, if you go to widowwedonow.com, there's a link for the shop in there too.
Great. If you'd like to show your snark or have something a little more subtle, go ahead and check that out. Again, that's
shop.widowwedonow.com.
Anita has some highlights, though, she'd like to share.
Before that, we have to back up because how many years ago Mel convinced me to go roller skating? And you're going to be like, why are you talking about this, Anita? Just bear with me for just a minute, okay? Mel was like, let's go roller skating. And I'm like, okay. So we chose a church parking lot that was flat because we live in the mountains. So found a church parking lot that was semi-flat, and we were roller skating. Two people who are too old to be roller skating in the church parking lot. A police officer shows up and rolls down her window. And I'm thinking, oh no, she's going to tell us that this is private property and that we're, us bad children aren't allowed to be roller skating on the property. So I'm like, well, we skate over to her feeling like all sheepish. And she says to us words I did not expect. And the words were, "Have you guys seen a horse?" And we were like, no, that's not. I thought you were going to yell at us. And she's like, "A horse has gotten out and is running around the town." And she said, "I don't know what I'm supposed to do if I find it. Like, that's not my job." Anyway, we had not seen the horse, and she left, and we continued to roller skate. Okay. Fast forward to the trial. We've watched the body cam footage of a few people, and the poor, I'm going to call him poor. The poor defense attorney didn't have a lot to work with. I'm saying poor a little bit tongue in cheek because, like, whatever. He didn't have a lot to work with. So to one of the officers, there was a lot of these things that were built up as like gotchas, like, this is going to prove the case. He's saying to one of the police officers, "Why did your body camera footage turn off?" And they're like, "Well, sometimes it turns off when you get too close to the car." And so they showed the body camera footage of this officer, but it was on a different officer's body cam footage. I don't know if that makes any sense. But he was trying to insinuate that this officer's body cam footage had been turned off purposefully for the conversation that happened next, which was Mel talking to this officer and Mel saying to the officer, "Hey, I think once you were looking for a horse in a parking lot." And the police officer was like, "Oh, yeah." And Mel said, "Did you ever find the horse?" And she's like, "Yeah, we found the horse, but I don't know. Like, I hate that that's part of my job," type of a deal. The defense attorney says, "Isn't it true that you know each other?" And she's like, "No, I don't know this person." And he goes, "Isn't it true that you met when you were looking for a horse or a small cow?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, it's the horse cop." It was the best moment almost ever. And I'm like sitting in the stands, almost peeing my pants because I'm laughing. And it's not an appropriate time to laugh. Like, this is during a trial, but I'm like, "It's the horse cop." And she's like, "No, I mean, I run into people all the time. It was not a gotcha moment. It did not prove that Mel and this police officer were colluding in their deep friendship."
Where did the small cow come from? I feel like that was just for funsies.
It was because I just like still I'm like, "Isn't it true that you know each other when you were looking for a horse or a small cow?" Anyway, that was very funny for me.
I I didn't
You
know
missed
some of
that.
that. I did actually when you were just telling that story. I learned things. I didn't know that's how it went down.
Yes, yes, yes. It was.
Wow.
And then the other like amazing gotcha moment was that he tried to make the podcast the whole reason for the entire thing, which was pretty amazing. Didn't he ask you, Mel, like, "Isn't it true that you have a podcast?" And she's like, "Yeah."
Here's how it happened. The way this works is the person, whoever I'm on the witness for, which
Hmm.
in this case is the prosecution, they do what's called direct examination. And that means that that attorney asks the witness questions that are more open ended. They're not like, "Isn't it true that blah, 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 blah?" They'll say, "What happened when you walked into here? And what happened here? And what did you say? And what do you recall this?" Blah, blah, blah. That's how they do it. So that, I think I was up there like 2 hours.
It was a long
It was a
time.
long time. And and then what happens is the other side, the defense attorney gets up there. And of course, their job is to destroy you, but also they know that if they are mean to victims, that it affects the jury. So they're super sneaky, but it made it seem like I was like, how in the world would our podcast that helps widows have anything to do with somebody strangling me and it being my fault and I schemed something? I
Hmm.
don't understand.
Well, first you got to start with a small cow, and then the podcast comes into play. Yeah.
So he goes through all this stuff and it's, "Isn't it true that da 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 da?" And some of the questions you're like, "Yeah, yes, that's true. I did say that." "Okay, here's your report. Did you write that?" "Yes." "Did you say these words?" "Yes." And then they'll try and twist your words and say, "Well, I didn't say that. What I said was blah, blah, blah." So then we get to the very, very end. And I didn't know this was the very end. "Isn't it true that you have a podcast?" And I said, "Yes." "And isn't it true that on this podcast you said I was assaulted by a family member?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "No further questions. The defense rests." And that was it. And Anita was so disappointed.
It was because it was going to be like this great moment of his implication was that Mel had made up the severity of the story because it would make good content, is what they
Oh,
were kind of
really?
after.
Wow.
Yeah, he talked about that in his closing argument, that you were like attention seeking basically, and that's like you wanted to talk about it to and get sympathy from people, and that's what you were doing in the podcast. So
So
anyway, um that those were the oh those were the entertaining things, and I'm sorry that I was entertained at your expense, Mel, but I sat through a lot of it time, so you owe me.
I feel like if you sat, yeah, if you put in the time
Yeah.
to be there, I'm glad that there were some things that were entertaining for you.
Um, Mel also had to explain about a shirt she was wearing at one point in time, and I won't go into the details of it, but I was super excited when she said that she and a colleague had just gone to Disney World because I was the colleague, and I was like, oh, that's such a fancy word to use for a widow wife. It would have been weird for you to say that. So that was kind of funny.
Yeah, I figured that was the most appropriate for court
Yeah.
because
And true. I
it
mean,
is true. We're
we were on a
business colleagues. Like
business function.
we were, we were,
Yes.
we were coming.
Coming home from Camp Widow. There's two other things that I'll tell you about the trial. They both had expert witnesses, and the expert witness for the prosecution was very good, very, very professional. I actually missed the defense witness because I had to go to work, but I came back as soon as I could. But the prosecution's expert witness talked a lot about strangulation, and I learned some really interesting things. I learned that it takes an average of 6.9 seconds for somebody to lose consciousness if they're being strangled to the point where both carotid arteries are being the flow impeded. Well, Kay, how do they know that? And she told us, and I could not get over this. In the 1940s, they did a study where they stuck blood pressure cuffs around people's necks and then they inflated them and watched how long it took for them to pass out. Just like, who? This was before like safety and what is it? Not the IRA,
I feel like this was done
IRB.
in by the Nazis.
I kind of think it might have been, but they'd be like, oh, Earl's down. Took him 4.8 seconds. Released the cuff and then up. Took Howard 10 seconds. He held out for a long time. Like, what in the world? This study is problematic. Anyway, that was my other entertaining part of it.
And it's interesting because being in that position where you do have both of those arteries being cut off, it was shocking to me how quick.
How fast. Yeah. I was surprised that it was that short. Like 6.9 seconds. That's not very long. I wish you were closer to Howard than, Earl on the choking scale.
Well, choking is actually legally defined as if you like have a hot dog in your throat.
That was something she talked about too, is like if you're just impairing the airway, it takes a lot longer to lose consciousness than if you're impeding blood flow. So that was also really interesting. I learned new things. There was a weird part, Mel, in that people in my family showed up on the body cam footage that we watched over and over and over again.
Yep.
And one of them was my sister, who showed up and actually talked to you guys for a good chunk of time. And this is the sister who has since passed away. So it was a little bit like, oh my gosh, like shocking. And also, it's just so weird that people are here and then they're like gone off of the planet. And that they're still like, she was there when this happened and now she is not here.
I didn't like forget about it, but like in the trial, of course, that was not part of what was on my brain until you told me about it later. And what happened is the event happened, the cops came, there was a lot of chaos, and then everybody left except me. I was just there.
You were like writing a report.
And probably the small cow lady, right?
Your
and
best friend.
So, but I remember looking out and I'm just like, this thing happened to me by people close to me, and those people left. And I'm here alone. That's ironic. Well, I've been in this position before, although be it through different circumstances. So I kind of was like, wow, I really am alone in the world. And then here comes Kaylin walking up right when I thought that. And I don't know if you remember this or if it was part of the footage, Anita, but I probably saw her and started crying. I do remember feeling emotional because I was like, there's this person that I'm alone and I have nobody. And then here comes Kaylin, and how ironic that it's Anita's sister, somebody that I know, and she just happens to be like walking by, and that she could be walking at that time
Yeah.
because if you guys listened to the episode, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, you know that
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 was
was,
right after she'd had her lung removed. So she was like walking to try and be able to walk. Yeah. And she stopped and she checked in with you and was like, what can we do to help? And you were like, I'm leaving to Sweden with my colleague, Anita, in 2 days or something like that. So,
oh man,
yeah.
it was a whole thing. And it's like the other thing that's interesting, it's like for you to be strangled doesn't mean you have to be at death's door. You can be strangled and then the pressure's relieved and you're still alive.
Mm,
And like I was alive still, luckily, because however many seconds it was, I don't know. I did black out. Everything went
yeah.
dark. And then all of a sudden everything came back light. And again, this is public record, so if you're somebody in my family that doesn't talk to me and is listening to this to be like, ooh, let's see how we can paint Mel as a bad person, it's public record. You're either there or you weren't. Go read the facts.
Yeah.
An 8-person jury decided that this was indeed an aggravated assault felony. And there was another misdemeanor in there because it's also against the law to try and get an emergency, like a communication device away from somebody in an emergency. In that case was my phone.
Yeah. When you're trying to call for help and they keep you from finding help or getting help,
Yeah, I was
basically.
trying
Yeah.
to call 911 and it was interrupted. So yeah, so basically it's been hell. I've been dealing with that and not having family
Yeah.
and slash not being believed
Hmm.
and not being believed without people even asking me that are also
Right.
accusing me of things. That
It's too
is,
bad. It's too bad that those, I mean, some of the people did come to the trial, but most of them were not there. And if you watched, like, listen to the 911 tape, watch the body cam footage, it's not, I don't know. I do think that people have a real talent for reverse engineering what happened in their brains. And so, they now think, well, Mel was being dramatic. But if they watch themselves say the things that they said right after, then it's a little bit like, no, like you have to believe yourself in that moment and not try and it's really hard. The whole thing made my mom cry like all the time. She just like cried the whole time. I was like, oh, mom.
I think there were 2 times in the courtroom where they played the 911
Hmm.
call.
Yeah.
I think that even if you play that recording for me in 30 years, I'll still
Still
break down.
feel awful.
I,
Yeah.
I can't, I just, it takes you right back there. And I've never been through something so traumatizing. And that's with having a dead husband and stuff. And I thought
Hmm.
that was bad. And of course, that's a different circumstance.
It's a different bad.
But I mean,
Yeah.
and there's our widow friends who maybe their person has died and there's a domestic violence background or they've had a history of that. And man, I really feel for the people who have been through spouse death or partner death with the element of domestic violence because
Yeah.
those things just separate are so intense and putting them together, I don't know how people are still standing. So for those of you who relate, man, I don't know the words to say, but my heart is trying to say things to you through this mic and it's not really working, but I hope that you can feel that I feel for you. Now, can we please talk about the sentencing? Because once it's over, the person, then they give you a sentencing.
Hmm.
And the sentencing was not very quick to happen because there were holidays involved and calendars are set aside for people who are already in prison to have things going on during the court. So end of October was the verdict, and then mid-January was the sentencing. So in for the sentencing, that means that I, as the victim, I have an opportunity to read a victim impact statement, which I
Hmm.
did. And I wanted to do that because it was such an eye-opening experience to try and be silenced by my family, my neighbors, by a defense attorney.
Just keep it in the family, Mel. Just why do you got to be so loud?
And I'm just like, wow. So if I stay silent, first of all, if I were wrong to call 911 and say this happened, it's my fault. It's not the person that did it's fault. That's not okay. It's like we're not supposed to be running around harming other people. That's not
Strangling
cool.
people. I know that's what I say to my kids all the time. You can't hurt people and you can't damage property.
And if you
It's our
do,
family motto.
then you this is what
It's paid for.
happens.
Yeah.
Like if
Yes.
again, if a rando came up to me and did the same thing, I would do the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's really terrifying to have somebody come into the space of your physical being and then do something like that. It is
Hmm.
it is terrifying. There's just like no other word. So that brings its own stress that I'd never gone through before. The stress of just being, man, just existing. And I'm like, man, am I going to have the energy to work? I need to work because I need to like not be, well, first of all, everyone has to work because you have to eat, but it's like, can I mentally handle this? I mean, I was doing my social work master's program around the time my dad died and then took a break. I can't resume still because a lot of the materials are that. And I'm like, I would not be serving anybody in a good way as a social worker if I'm put in a position where I have to maybe get re-triggered, you know. So obviously right now I'm not a candidate. There's just so much damage, and yeah, there's damage to everybody else, but that's what I feel like with the trial stuff. The way that the system works is it re-victimizes the victim, and for the person who did it, because it's innocent until proven guilty, it's still treated like that, right? So it was hard for me to not be believed, and I
Hmm.
still have some things where I'm just like, I feel like I just have to prove everything all the time because for not being believed for so long by the people who are closest to you, are supposed to love you, and not being listened to, it does some damage. And one of the things in the impact report, everybody, by the way, in the Widow podcast made it into the victim impact statement
True.
because that was one of the things that it had affected. And also my volunteering for Big Brothers Big Sisters, it wasn't safe for me to then continue that and put a child, you know, potentially in harm's way if somebody came and attacked me, or if I was like, I was so not sure what was going on, or were people out to get me? Was somebody going to confront me? Was I going to get attacked again? What if that happened if I was with somebody else? That's not okay, of course, and I would never want to put a child through that. That was one thing that it affected. And I talked about how with our podcast, like I had to withdraw basically from social media this entire time, which is true because first of all, the stress. I mean, social media stresses everyone out, but I want to help widows, and our community is really important. And you guys have helped us, and say that what we're doing has been helpful. And I was so bothered that it was bleeding over into that. Because it's like, okay, I'm used to being the one taking the brunt of this. It's like, hey, Mel, this is your fault. You're bad. Da 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 da. You spoke up. But then it's like, this impacts the people that I try to help. And those people that I'm trying to help, they're hurting. They have a lot of stuff. They need to hear stories from people going through similar things every week. Well, guess what? Now, because I'm the one editing, I'm so traumatized that I'm inconsistent. And then Anita and I was just like, okay, if I say one thing on the podcast wrong, or even like, and we joke all the time about dumb crap. There was one time and Anita made a joke and I got in trouble for it from my family.
You're welcome.
And I'm just like, wow, okay, if it's going to be like that, okay, I just will stop saying things. And then what it did is like I kept becoming more and more silent to myself. And so I noticed as I was editing for the past year and a half, I'm like, huh, Anita's doing a lot of the legwork and asking questions and this and that. And I'm like, I don't remember it being like that, but I just was in the state of like unwellness. So in the statement, it's like, yes, and my colleague, she's had to
Thank
pick
you.
up the slack for that. She's had to do all of the scheduling, which she does, the running of the group. I've been no help there. Been patient with me when I'm like, I can't do this. I couldn't get the episode edited this week. I'm trying. It's taking me like 5 times as long just to get through it. And so like all this stuff, it's like, yeah, I'm the victim of a crime. And then there's all these other thousands of people that it's affected in a different way. And here's some perspective. So I know we've talked about the Holmes-Rahe Stress Index before. It's a little index that it's assigned scores based on different life events that are stressful. Some of those stressors are like marriage. So it's not all like potentially negative stuff, but it's supposed to be taken within a 2 or 3 year time period. All right, guys. So, you know that I've been through a lot of the same hell that you guys all have been through. None of that hell was that even included because this was not even close to the time that Scott died. So I added up my score from when this happened. Guess what my score was? And my score when Scott died was probably three something, I don't know, 300 something. And for context, 0 to 150 is normal. 150 to 300 is 50% more likely to have a stress-induced illness. And 300 and above is 80% more likely for a stress-induced illness. Okay. Mine was, drumroll, I need it, Anita.
That's the worst drum roll ever.
562.
I feel like there needs to be like a sound that comes after it, but I don't know what comes after the drum roll. Rim shot? No.
Or maybe a wah wah.
Oh, that's maybe that's better.
The sentencing ended. I feel like it was great. The judge was amazing. I feel like he was very compassionate with everybody involved. And hopefully the people who need to get help are getting help. And I want to heal. And I have protections in place that I requested, and which is unfortunate that that is needed. But it is also unfortunate, and the judge said this, it's unfortunate that it bled into the extended family and that they chose sides because, and I didn't know this till I got there, they were the ones that all wrote letters of support for the defense. So literally, again, standing alone with no family that's my life story. But you know what? I can't say enough for people who are friends that have become family, and going through something like this has just showed me like, we can do anything. It's not easy. Would I choose to go through it again? Of course not. But man, you guys, take your health seriously because the stress from this stuff has now given me a couple of conditions that my grandparents had, but they got them in their 60s, and now it's just accelerated it. And so I've been going to a lot of doctors and trying to get a lot of stuff figured out. And like that body keeps the score stuff, it is real time. And some of these things, you know, you go through chronic stress and then they don't manifest until maybe the stress is over. And then maybe a few months after that, you're like, why am I noticing this, and this? So I've been kind of doing the whole round of lots of different doctors and getting some stuff figured out. And other stuff is taking time to figure out. And some stuff's got to just be managed. And it's hard for me because I feel like this didn't need to go to trial.
I know.
People didn't need to pick a side. It would have been awesome as somebody who has been harmed with violence if there could have been some support.
That was one of the ironic things was that somebody said to me, well, Mell could just make
it go away.
Something like that. Mell could just stop this. Mell could just make this go away. And I was like, well, so can the other person because they were offered 2 or 3 plea deals. So the other person had the ability to stop it as well. Like it's not just you, it's not your responsibility to do that. But this like that was not, I don't know, it was just like somehow you became the bad guy in it. And it's like a weird, like sometimes when logic leaves, you're just like, how did we get there? It's very strange.
And I don't know specifically who a lot of the people are that picked a certain side and said those things, but I hope if they ever listen to this or if they go and they look at the facts of the case, go get it. They won't. I hope that they learn how to do research and to, not just go by whatever they think. And also, what part of you thinks that strangulation is okay? I think that is something that people should look at. It's like, oh, but she didn't die. It's like, oh, Mell didn't die. And it's like, why would it have to get to the point where I did die? What if I did?
Mm-hmm. Well, then it was your fault.
It was still my fault.
You should have been stronger.
Then it's victim blaming. Yeah, I mean, you're screwed no matter what if you're a victim. And it's terrifying to speak up. It's like I was facing speaking up against my family, and that's like a big taboo, and that goes up against the family system. And
yes.
and I also was they have you do the Bible thing, put your hand up and you're like, I swear to tell the truth. And I'm like, I do. And I took it seriously. It's like, I did. I told the truth. And because I told the truth, I was penalized by my family. So that's what's been going on. I'm starting to be a little bit more well, but I don't know. We'll see.
I've noticed like I feel like it's been good, like that it's all over for you, that it's all over for you. I have noticed that this is I think it's going to be better.
Yeah.
I'm saying no words and just a lot of noises, but I've noticed improvement in you once it was all said and done and you weren't under this like umbrella of when, if, how are people are gonna react, is it gonna happen? Is she gonna nope.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
take
feel
that
like
part out.
your only option is to say nothing and then you just
Mhm.
victimize yourself again.
Yeah.
24/7 for 20 months, no let up, all the time. Like you wake up in the night to go to the bathroom and you're like terrified. Is something going to happen to me? Wait, if somebody talks to me, are they just going to start accusing me and saying this is my fault? Do I need to be prepared? How can I run away? I can't run away. What do I do? And it's just like it's like hypervigilance nonstop. So stressful. And I'm so grateful that it's over. I do feel justice was served, and I'm so glad that the system saw that and the jurors saw things clearly. And I wish the best to those involved who need some rehabilitation. Get it? Like healing is up to each of us. We know
Right.
that from widowhood. It's just like
Right.
it's
Once again, those
hard.
skills come in handy. You're like,
Yeah,
I know how to do hard. I know how to do hard. Like, yeah.
yeah. This is a hard that I really don't recommend. That's all I have to say. But if you have been through something like that, or if you are in a system where things like abuse is happening or things that are not okay, that are against the law, and you feel like you have nobody on your side and you feel like you have to be silenced, I hope that you find some strength and maybe even just one safe person to help you to know that what's happening to you is not okay. That's the hard part too. It's like the people that need to speak out are the people that get ground back down. It's like I'm automatically lying in some people's eyes because, well, they're like, well, I didn't see it. So how do I know? You could just be lying.
Hmm.
And that's hard. And that all the way on top of going through the event and the assault and all that comes with it, it's hard. So guys, I'm so sorry if you have dealt with things like that or are dealing with things like that. It's so hard. It's different kind of stress that I just hope that no one goes through it, but people will. And there's really great domestic violence organizations out there. There are people you can join with some coalitions to help with legislations. And I guess what's interesting here in January, one of the bills proposed was in Utah that they wanted to cut the bill in half for strangulation exams after an assault for domestic
Like that they
violence.
weren't going to do as many exams.
Yeah.
Like it was a bad thing. It wasn't a good thing.
Yeah. Yep. And
Yeah.
I didn't have one because they botched it and medical care was denied for me by a family member. So that didn't happen for me. But those things are important. It's like non-fatal strangulation is like one of the very most common ways of domestic violence, and it doesn't leave marks, doesn't leave red marks around your throat. It's so fast, like Anita said, whatever.
6.9 seconds.
Yep. And you're out. So yeah, it's scary to be the victim of something like that. It's scary to be on the outs with your family. It's scary to have no support. And it's just all around scary, but you can do it. So if you're in that situation, I don't know. I'm probably not much help. Don't reach out to me, or do. You can send us an email and Anita can help me like read it because I'm still kind of recovering and but I know that in Utah, Safe Harbor is a really great resource for domestic violence victims. But a lot of times the systems they don't merge, and especially in criminal cases, it's like there were domestic violence resources for me if I had done a civil case, but not for criminal. So yeah, really, really, really interesting. So
It's like fascinatingly, awfully interesting and boring all at once. So
Yeah.
that's the story of what the hell is wrong with Mel. That's what I decided this episode has to be.
Yes, and to everybody that made it this far listening, I'm so sorry. I'm impressed that I'm alive, first of all, from that, and then alive from the fallout of all of that. And that's what was going on. And actually, I did edit one podcast episode while I was like
In the trial.
sequestered in the trial. So I was like, yes,
I did.
finally the trial's going on. I can like do some editing.
Do some
So
work.
so that's what happened. Anita and I are still great. There's been no fallout with us. We're great. Widow wives forever. Yeah, there you go. And I don't know.
Colleagues forever.
Colleagues for
In search of the small cow.
can you imagine if I was like, she's my widow wife? They'd say, what?
What does that mean? Be like,
Really?
never mind.
Never mind.
Never mind. Thanks for listening, everybody. And thanks, Mel, for sharing what's been going on. Sometimes it's hard to open up, and it's still hard because you're trying to like protect family and not go into all the details. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah. And there's a lot that
there's a lot more.
there's
Yeah.
a lot that's I'm not including, and it's messy. It's
Yep.
really messy.
Super messy.
And there's a lot of hard stuff.
If you guys want to keep the podcast going, will you please check out our Patreon? It's patreon.com/WWDN.
If you want to buy Anita tacos because she's been doing double the work
Oh,
since
buy
I've
Mel
not,
tacos.
and I need some tacos because I'm just a zombie.
Yeah.
Go to buymeacoffee.com/widow we do now.
And when we talk to you again, hopefully, no, it won't ever be a better topic, Mel. That's the terrible part of our podcast. It's
The small cow was pretty good.
the small cow was pretty terrific. But we'll see you the next time we talk to you. We'll always take a nice rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And until next time, I'm Anita.
I'm Mel.
You're just two young widows with no small cows. And we're all trying to
Aw.
figure out widow
We
do
meow moo.
moo. Mel,
Yeah,
we have a major announcement to make.
go for it.
Did you know that right now all plans on Mint Mobile are what?
$15 a month.
Okay, that's truly ridiculous. Do you know how much regular cell phones are?
Yep.
$1 bazillion a month. 15 is less than that.
New customers get 3 months of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month if you sign up right now. And guess what? I use it. I love it. I've used it all over the country, all over the world, and it's great. And if you're wondering about phones, they have those available as well, or you can just port your own number and your current phone over to Mint Mobile. They make it so easy.
So if people are interested in trying out Mint Mobile, how can they go about doing that?
Go to trymintmobile.com/WWDN. And you know what's interesting? When my dad died, we actually put his phone on a Mint Mobile plan because it kept his number going, but it was $15 a month. So there you go. And there's different storage plans, but you might as well just get the unlimited because it's $15 a month.
Absolutely. All right, go try it today.
That's trymintmobile.com/WWDN.